Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today we're going to do the only modification at the moment that we're planning on doing to the Saint, and that is to replace the front sight post. We're going to replace the front sight post with this Tru-Glo bright sight post, and what it's going to have is a fiber optic, tritium fiber optic, so it'll be tritium at night and fiber optic during the day. And that's going to solve the only real problem we had with this rifle, is that neither one of us could see the sights. So the first step is I'm going to remove the factory sight, and I'm going to use this factory sight removal tool. It does come with a tool, but I actually have one, and it comes in a 4 and a 5 pin option. So I'm going to use the tool I've got to remove the factory post. And the way you do it is you're going to put the tool on here, and you're going to line it up with the notches that you'll see in the wheel, and then you're going to push it down to compress that pin. Of course, it helps if I have the right side down. So you're going to push down on it. In this case, I'm also going to put my elbow on the top of the rifle to keep it from tilting. You notice I've got it in my lead sled. And I'm going to unscrew the current sight by pressing down on it the whole time, because I have to keep that pin released as I unscrew it out of here. And I'm just going to, once you get it to a certain point, then it'll just unscrew out without any further hassles. And I've got the post in my hand. Some sight posts might have a spring under there, so be careful when you're pulling it out if yours has got a spring for tensioning, that you don't pull it all the way out and let it fly. So now you need to remove the original locking pin, and depending on how your fingers are, you may or may not be able to get it. So I'm just going to use this little pair of pliers to grab it. And the locking pin consists of this little sleeve and a spring that you probably saw fall down. And there's the spring. You aren't going to use these again as part of this process, but you might want to save them for the future. If you ever decide to take this out and put your original sights back, you'd want to have those parts. Now I'm going to install their little locking sleeve. This is the first step of installing the new part. And I'm going to drop this into the threads, and I'm going to use the A side of their tool to tighten it. But it's real important that I don't cross-thread it. It should go in very, very easily. And if it doesn't, then I've got it cross-threaded and I need to back off. So I'm going to kind of slide it under their tool, use my finger to hold it in place, and guide it into the hole. And then I'm going to turn it backwards and forwards a little bit to make sure that the threads grab. And I'm turning it very, very easily. If I have to put any force on it, then it's probably cross-threaded. Back off and fix it, because once you damage the threads, you're pretty much going to fail from the rest of the way forward. And I'm going to turn this in until it's all the way down. But it's important that I'm not going to try to tighten it. I'm just going to turn it until it seats. I want to put it all the way down in, but I do need to be able to adjust this. So as soon as I start getting any amount of tension, I know it's bottomed out. I'm going to back off a little bit so it's not tight. So it's all the way down in there, just not tightened. At that point, I can now install their new sight, and the tritium tube goes down into where the original locking tube went, the locking pin went. This is going to drop down, and it's smooth, it's not threaded. It's going to drop down through that sleeve, and then we'll assemble the next half of it. So you can see what this thing looks like. Now before I go to put this in, I did pre-fit just before I started the video. And one of the things I noticed is that mine was slightly bent. If I turn it this way, you'll notice that the post and the tritium tube line up perfectly with each other. They didn't originally. They were kind of cockeyed, which to me is a bit of a QC defect. It shouldn't come that way. So I did fix it by grabbing the edge of this, the top part, with a pair of pliers, like a slip joint pliers, and then turning it and then bending the post a little bit, and be real gentle. If you snap it off, then of course it's not going to work. And make sure that you don't put any pressure or force on the tritium tube. Hopefully that's an anomaly. Hopefully I got the only one that's was bent. But if that happens to you and you have to straighten it, and it manifests itself by when I tried to test fit it, I had to put a lot of force on it. And as soon as it felt like I had to put force on it, I stopped. So let's go ahead and install this one. And I also put just a very light coating of oil on this to make it slide in easier. So I'm going to slide this in by lining this threaded post up with the hole, and this back piece where the tritium tube is with the original retaining pin, the locking pin. And I should be able to just put it in there and just push it down, and then push it all the way down. And at this point, of course, it's not sighted in correctly, but it is in position to go to the next step. Now, if you read online, you're going to read just how miserable these things are to install. And I think part of that is people trying to do it without a rifle rest. If you don't have some sort of device, jig, vise, rest to put your rifle in, you're not going to succeed in installing this. There are several points at it that you have to be an octopus with hands to do it. If you have some sort of a rest to put the gun in, that kind of takes care of it. The next step is I'm going to take this spring and I'm going to slide it up over the bottom of this threaded shaft, and there's a little hole, and what I'm going to end up having to do is put this pin through that hole to hold the spring in place so I can put the nut on. And when I go to do that, I'm just going to describe how I'm going to do it. I'm going to put the spring up in there, and then I'm going to reach over the top, and I'm going to use my fingernails to grab the spring and pull the spring up, and I'm going to use the palm of my hand to prevent this from pushing back up, because it's going to want to push back up. Get that pin in there, and then we'll resume. I've got it in place. You'll see I've got the pin sticking through the hole, the spring is trapped above it, and then I just pre-seated the nut so that the nut is on the threads. And at this point, I'm going to tighten the nut down, and I could get a little wrench to do it, but you really don't need to have this thing super tight, because once the spring presses against it, the spring's going to hold it in place. It's going to prevent it from turning. And at that point, I can now pull the pin out and let the spring lock up against the nut. So now the sight's installed, but it's too low. So basically at this point what you do, and this is kind of an annoying and time-consuming little process, is you use the A side of the tool to reach down past the sight and turn that little locking nut just like you did on the original one. The only difference is you don't have a retaining pin to hold. And you turn it to raise the sight or lower the sight as you see fit. And in most cases you're going to end up having to raise it. So I'm just going to sit there and do that, and then eventually I'll get the sight up where I want it. The next step will be I'll use a laser bore sight to get it close. There's no way I'm going to get it, be able to sight this thing in from the table. I'll get it close. I'll go get it on paper at least. I'll go out in 25 yards and I'll get it at least zeroed on paper, and then I'll go out and I'll zero it at 100 yards. And at that point I'll have a fiber optic sight that I can easily see and that actually will work at night, and it'll give you a pinpoint little dot. The dot will be small, but AR sights are small. So, in that case, it's still better than a black sight or one that I just painted a white dot on, and it should give us the ability to see this more clearly with the peep sight. So if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and have a great day. Thank you.